Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's first video. It's a big video that we're starting off with on this Saturday morning because we're going to have a look at 13 long-range seasonal models and see what they're all showing for the winter of 2018-19 for the third and final time this season. So strap yourself in, you're going to see what, if any, model consensus we can get from these long-range models for winter of 2018-19 very shortly. Just to say that coming up later on today, really busy day at the website. So coming up later on today, we're going to have the weekend forecast. As always, on a Saturday, we're going to have a detailed look at the weather for the week ahead. We'll also have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days in detail with the GFS, the ECM and the GEM shorter range models. And then this evening, we're going to have your 10th Christmas update. So really busy day coming up at GWV today. Tomorrow, of course, is the 13th and final winter update. So all the winter updates are drawing to a close this weekend, and then next weekend, next Sunday, 2nd of December, we've got to release the winter 2018-19 forecast. So it's getting very close to the end now, and we're going to go through these 13 long-range models very shortly. Just say it's going to be quite a long video, so you can't watch it in one go. Get yourself a cup of tea, and as it's fairly early, maybe a slice of toast, and we'll go through these 13 long-range models. Later on today, this evening, this video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page. There'll be a written summary that goes with it as well. You can find a link to most of these models, not all of them. You can find a link to most of them on the links page at GWV's. So let's get on with your third and final winter 2018-19 seasonal model roundup. So we're going to begin with the JMA 500 millibar height anomalies for the winter 2018-19. Now, this is broken down into monthly periods, or you can break this model down into monthly periods. We did do that on Thursday. You'll need to have a look on the catch-up page at GWV to see how this works out on a month-by-month basis. But basically, the JMA seems to be going for a colder than average winter signal. So it has this area of above average height. It's pretty sure it's just here in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. And that's where we are on most of these long-range seasonal models as well. So, for the 3 months of the winter 2018-19 overall, it has this area of above average heights out to the west and the northwest, but they also extend up to the north as well, those above average heights. And so, you would suspect that for the winter overall, we will be bringing wind in from a northeasterly direction. Now, temperature anomalies are a bit of a mystery for this winter because the model is actually going for slightly milder than average temperatures for the UK and for Europe. Precipitation-wise, it's coming out a little bit on the drier than average side for the UK. Most parts of Europe are looking a little bit wetter than average. Let me show you the mean wind direction for this winter, and you'll see why it's such a strange temperature anomaly forecast, because these black arrows are very much from a northeasterly or come over here, possibly even easterly direction. So there is nothing else that those winds could be doing other than producing cold air from the northeast and from the east. And so how the model is managing to come away with a milder than average temperature anomaly really is quite extraordinary. But if the model came off as it's predicting, we're looking at a rather coolish December, getting colder in January, and possibly ending up with a very cold and extremely blocked pattern with a lot of east and northeasterly winds as we get through into February. So, generally, we're looking at a colder than average winter pattern anyway with the JMA for this month. So, that's gone a little bit wrong. Let's just go back up here then and flip that over to there. Right, and then we want to go to there. Sorry about that, I got all the charts loaded up, but it started to refresh itself. So this is the Brazilian model. This is a 500 millibar height anomaly from the Brazilian model for winter of 2018-19. This one does things a little bit differently. So it has green and blue, which is above average heights, that's high pressure, and yellow, orange and red below average heights, which is low pressure. So we see all of that blue and purple up to the north in terms of the 500 millibar height anomaly, which is northern blocking, quite extensive northern blocking, that sitting to the north of the British Isles. And then we see below average heights down here, which is kind of like a trough of low pressure sitting to the west of Portugal. We seem to have some sort of southerly tracking jet stream going on, doing something like that. And you would suspect we're probably bringing in maybe sort of easterly type winds or possibly southeasterly winds. Certainly wouldn't be an overly mild winter anyway with that kind of solution. So pretty block pattern being predicted by the Brazilian model for this winter. Quite a lot of northern blocking. Temperature anomalies are looking like that overall, coming out close to average, possibly hinting at being a little bit on the milder than average side, and precipitation anomalies look like that. Now you can see how dry it is there in the northern Atlantic to the south of Greenland and Iceland, wetter than average underneath it. So that's our southerly tracking jet stream. We've got the southerly tracking jet stream going through there. We've got the blocking and the high pressure up here. And you will think that will probably be a pattern that will be conducive to a cold winter. So, again, a lot of times you have to interpret, you have to read between the lines, especially with temperature and precipitation anomalies, because they do tend to overcook the temperatures quite a lot, these seasonal models. Reading between the line with the 500 millibar heights as it is, and that precipitation anomaly, I think the Brazilian model is also hinting at the chance of a fairly coldish winter there. So we go through next to Canseps. We go north from Brazil to Canada. This is the mean sea level pressure anomaly for winter 2018-19 from Canseps via tropicaltidbits.com. You can see that it's going for low pressure to be generally to the south and southwest of the country this winter, and some above average pressure, some high pressure to be up to the north. Again, possibly hinting at a little bit of a southerly tracking jet stream coming through. The temperature anomaly for this winter from Canseps is forecast to be very, very close to average, not a big deviation. Many parts of Europe coming out with a slightly milder than average winter. And the precipitation anomaly looks like that. So a little bit drier than average to the north of the country, close to average with precipitation around the UK, close to average through much of Europe. And if we just break this down on a month-by-month basis, I'll just do that for you with Canseps, just this once. So this is how December looks. It looks a very unsettled month in December with low pressure out to the west of the UK, and probably bringing in a strong jet stream from the Atlantic as well. So December looks like it's probably going to be quite an unsettled month. Let's move you through to January. That's how January looks. Suddenly getting a lot more interesting with an area of high pressure then setting up generally to the north of the British Isles. Low pressure is becoming stuck in the middle of the Atlantic. So January is presenting a blocking signal. And then I'll take you through to February, just so you can see what Canseps is showing in February. And there we go. We find ourselves going into a very blocked pattern. This is in line. I think this is in line with what the JMA is hinting at. Certainly for January and for February. January is transitional, going into something a lot more blocked, and then February that blocking becomes really quite extreme with below average heights to the south of the country down here. And yeah, we're bringing in those easterly winds. So if you want to have a look at the temperature anomaly for February, that's how it looks. And yes, Canseps is going for a colder than average February there for the UK. Cold and average month being forecast. January is close to average. December is a little bit milder than average. So a backloaded winter. Cold in February, coldest in February, but January would also have some wintry potential as well. This is the analogues forecast from Patal Peng, working under the umbrella of NOAA. So this is the 200 millibar height anomaly for the winter of 2018-19 from Patal Peng. What Patel's doing here is looking at sea surface temperature anomalies in any given month. In this instance, in October 2018, and then comparing those sea surface temperature anomalies to past years that had a similar sea surface temperature anomaly profile. This is the forecast that Patal is coming up with. So he thinks we're going to have above average heights to our south, close to Spain and Portugal. Below average heights will be up to the north. Generally an Atlantic driven, therefore, westerly winter, with the wind coming in from the southwest. Temperature anomalies then with Patal Peng's analogues are forecast to be milder than average, above average temperature anomalies. Precipitation anomalies above average. Patal is going for a milder and wetter than average winter. But if we go through to the next trimester period, that's the trimester period of December, January, February, winter 2018-19. If I take you through to the next tri-monthly period in terms of a 200 millibar height anomaly, look at that. This is January, February, March, so taking us into late winter, and there we are. A very extensive northern blocking pattern is appearing around Greenland. Suddenly the pattern becomes much more conducive late in the winter for much colder weather potentially. There's no corresponding trough underneath it, but you would expect low pressure to be around the UK and through central parts of Europe as well. We've got all this white, you can expect that to be blue. And so with the high pressure up here around Greenland and the low pressure, let's say it's sitting somewhere around the Baltic Sea or northern Germany, between the two, you expect to be pulling down those northeasterly winds into northern Europe and into the UK. And so a much colder late winter is possible there, in line with JMA and also in line with CANSIPS as well. Very interesting update, I think, so far, but let's carry on. This is the IRI. It is a probability forecast, the temperature and precipitation, that is coming from the International Research Institute. And this is the temperature probability for the winter, for December, January, February. The IRI are forecasting average probability with temperatures across the UK and Ireland, across much of Central and Western Europe as well. The warmer than average temperatures in terms of probability are across the far east and northeast of Europe. Precipitation wise, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So we see, again, not a particularly strong signal. Some parts of France are being forecast to have above normal precipitation in terms of probability. The UK coming out with sort of an average probability for this winter. Ireland is forecast to be a bit drier than average. Parts of Scandinavia, a bit of a mixed bag up there. So not clear-cut signals for precipitation, but average temperatures are expected. CFS V2 is looking like that. No NASA this month, by the way. I've decided to take NASA out because I really don't think we can get enough from those temperature and precipitation anomalies with the NASA model, unfortunately. And we have got a couple of extra models I'm going to come on to in a moment. So I thought I'd take NASA out of this one. So this is the 700 millibar height anomaly from the CFS V2. This is what it's going for the winter of 2018-19, with below average heights to the west of the country, and bringing in the jet stream like that, probably on a little bit of a southerly track with the jet stream. Not really sure what's going on up here where we've got all of this white. It's certainly not a clear-cut zonal signal. The above average heights are weakened and displace further south than you would normally expect them to be. We've got all of this white up here, so not blocking up here, but you would certainly not rule out the chance that pressure could be higher there than the model is currently showing, with this area of below average heights, so low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic. So what's going on up here is going to be critical. Do we have hints of some blocking maybe getting going in the northern latitudes? Certainly wouldn't rule it out based on that 700 millibar height anomaly. Temperature anomalies are looking like that. Not a very mild winter. Yes, they are hinting at being slightly above average with the temperature anomaly, especially through the central and western parts of Europe. So the UK and Ireland actually close to average with the temperature anomaly. So not a big deviation there with temperatures with CFS V2. Precipitation-wise, looking quite unsettled across the west of Europe, the UK, Ireland, France, down to Spain and Portugal. Above average precipitation there. Maybe hinting at being a little bit drier than average for Norway and possibly parts of Iceland as well. So it's a very weak signal really from the CFS, which is a little bit surprised because at this point you would normally expect models to be going for very mild conditions and a strong zonal signal, which we haven't really got there. And that on its own is also quite interesting. ECMWF, mean sea level pressure anomalies for the winter of 2018-19 looking like this. High pressure centred close to the UK and also backing in towards Scandinavia as well. So you'd expect a very quiet and pretty dry winter with that, with wind coming in from an east or southeasterly direction. Let's just run you through to the late winter period. This is for January, February, March. That high pressure is on the move and it starts to move towards the northwest of the British Isles. And then as we go through to the final tri-monthly period, which is February, March, April, we do take that high pressure up to Greenland. So again, maybe hints at late winter, with this one possibly even early spring, but certainly the hints are there, but late winter we might start to generate something a little bit colder. Temperature anomalies with the ECMWS seasonal model are looking like that for winter 2018-19, close to or possibly hinting at being a little bit above average with those temperature anomalies for the winter. If I flip you through to the late winter though, you see the temperature anomalies going much closer to average, so a little bit of a cool down is hinted at for the latter part of the winter. Precipitation anomalies very much close to average, which is a bit surprising because it is placing an area of high pressure close to the country for this winter period, but the precipitation is coming out close to average for winter 2018-19. And then it gradually starts to take those drier than average precipitation anomalies out to the northwest as that high pressure begins to ridge more towards Iceland and Greenland. I think the ECM is hinting at probably relatively close to average temperatures early in the winter, and then maybe going quite a lot colder later in the winter. Meteo France, this is from Copernicus by the way, and I've got a couple of new models from Copernicus I'm going to include in this third and final seasonal model roundup winter 2018-19 in a moment as well. So for Meteo France, this is how we're looking in terms of the mean sea level pressure anomaly for winter 2018-19. High pressure out to the northwest of the British Isles. We've got a blocking signal around Green. We've got below average pressure, low pressure to the south and southeast of the country. Again, you would think we're pulling in those winds from a northeasterly direction. That's hinting at a colder than average winter, I think, with Meteo France. We go through to late winter. And if anything, in late winter, that blocking signal is strengthened with Meteo France around Greenland and around Iceland too. Again, you'll think we're pulling down cold air from a north or northeasterly type direction with that one. And then this continues into February, March, April as well. So Meteo France looks like it's hinting at a cold winter. Temperature anomalies from Meteo France for winter 2018-19 are coming out colder than average, very close to the UK. I do think Meteo France is there with a cold winter for the UK. Notice very cold winter also being forecast across many eastern, southern parts of America. So it looks like one of those winters where we could have both the northwest of Europe and also the east of America colder than average, which can happen sometimes. Through to the late winter period, again, we hint at being colder than average here for or close to the UK. Very cold winter predicted from Meteo France across eastern, southern parts of America. So again, Meteo France, I think, is there with a cold winter. In terms of precipitation anomalies, the winter of 2018-19 with Meteo France via Copernicus and GWV, we see a drier than average signal to the north of the British Isles. That's indicative of a blocking. Otherwise, very close to average with precipitation this winter for much of the UK and for much of Northern Europe as well. This is a new model. This is the GWV. This is now being featured at Copernicus as well. So this is the long-range model from Germany, from the German Meteorological Agency. Yes, they do have their own long-range model in Germany. So the GWV seasonal model in terms of its mean sea level pressure anomaly for winter 2018-19 looks like that. Has some high pressure up over Greenland, not as strong as the signal that we have with Meteo France. It has this very deep trough of low pressure over the UK and going out into the Atlantic as well. So this is a rather unsettled winter with the jet stream coming through rather like that. There is, as I say, a blocking signal up around Greenland, but it doesn't look like it's enough to force that jet stream to the south of the UK. Let's see what happens in the late winter with the GWV. And it just stays very unsettled. So this is the first model, I think, that we've seen that's really going for a very unsettled winter. The German model once had that low pressure just out to west of the country. Again, bringing the jet stream through like that. That's just a very unsettled winter that GWV is forecasting there. Temperature anomalies, therefore, are coming out with a milder than average winter, not just for the UK, but for many northern and central parts of Europe, coming out with a milder than average winter. And if we go through to late winter, actually it turns even milder. So the German model is definitely going for a mild and wetter and rather unsettled winter. Let's confirm that with the precipitation anomaly. There we go. We can see that above average precipitation is forecast close to the UK for the winter of 2018-19. And that continues into the late winter as well with GWV. There we go. The German model is the first one to be forecasting a proper Atlantic-driven, wet, windy and mild winter there. And then the next new model I can show you is the CMCC. So this is a Mediterranean climate change model. And again, this is part of the Copernicus suite of long-range model outputs. I think this is from either from Spain or from Italy. Someone will tell me about where this model is actually where it's actually coming from. I've got a feeling it's from Spain. But anyway, wherever it's coming from, it's at Copernicus. It's part of their suite of long-range seasonal models, and this is what the CMCC model is showing for mean sea level pressure. And look at that, it's going for a really, really blocked high pressure in the northern latitudes type winter. So this is the mean sea level pressure anomaly for the winter of 2018-19, and it is very, very blocked in terms of northern blocking. We've got low pressure through the middle of the Atlantic with the jet stream going into southern Europe as well. I've got no idea how reliable the CMCC or the GWV models are, because this is the first time I've seen them at Copernicus. It's the first time I've been able to use them. You'll be seeing a lot more of them in the next few months and years, hopefully. But that's it. It's going for a very blocked winter, and you would expect to bring in a lot of easterly winds there with the CMCC long-range model. That's late winter, that's January, February, March. Again, very, very extensive northern blocking. Lots of high pressure in the northern latitudes from Greenland to Scandinavia, going up towards Siberia as well. Low pressure is all down here. The jet stream is going through down there. We've got these easterly winds coming through up here then. And again, you would expect a cold winter with this model. Again, as is often the case with these long-range season models, it's not particularly cold with its temperature anomaly. All of this white area, which is just like the model thinks it's no signal, all of that white area with that mean sea level pressure anomaly should be colder than average. You would expect a colder than average winter there, much in line with what Meteo France is showing, probably more extreme actually than what Meteo France is showing. It's always a height summer pressure that's the most important factor, and really ignore the temperature and precipitation. Well, not ignore, but sort of don't take the temperature and precipitation anomalies that serious. It's a 500 millibar geopotential heights and mean sea level pressure that's most important with these long-range models in my experience. This is late winter, and again we're seeing the CMCC seasonal model is going for average temperatures. What about precipitation then finally with this model? So a drier than average winter is expected, particularly to the north of the British Isles, because it's got all that high pressure, of course. Wetter than average across southern Europe, that's because it's got the jet stream running in from off the Atlantic. Everything about this model tells me a cold winter is very likely. This is screaming out a cold winter to me, along with Meteo France. They are both going for a cold winter, I think. So there we go, and then we move on to our very own Glow C5. We're nearing the end now. We've got Glow C5 from the UK Met Office. Huge flip has taken place this month with Glow C. So now the mean sea level pressure anomaly for the winter of 2018-19 is going for above average pressure, high pressure blocking around Greenland, and low pressure is underneath it from the Atlantic running into Europe and then setting up across Central Europe. You would expect the wind to be coming in from an east or northeasterly direction. A very blocked winter is being forecast then from the UK Met Office Glow C5, very blocked winter indeed. And then as we go through to the late winter, this is January, February, March, that blocking just gets more extreme actually. So again, look at all this high pressure that we've got up here around Greenland. It also extends to Iceland. It extends over towards Svalbard and up to Siberia. Low pressure is underneath it. There is nothing else that could happen here other than a cold winter, because we would again be bringing wind in from an easterly direction. What a flip from Glow C5 compared to what it's been showing in the past two, or the previous two winter updates. The blocking signal just reduces a little bit for February, March, April, but never mind about that. What about this for January, February, March? That December, January, February, I should say, winter 2018-19. That has got to be a colder than average winter. And so the model, yes, it is hinting, I'm not going to town with it, but they never do with these long range models, it is hinting at some colder than average temperature anomalies close to the UK for this winter. If I flip you over to late winter, that's how it looks. Probably getting a little bit more widespread with those colder than average temperature anomalies covering many parts of northern Europe there. So Glow C going for a colder than average winter, certainly with mean sea level pressure anomalies. Precipitation anomalies look like that. So a wetter than average winter signal for many central parts of Europe, and of course with a blocking pattern, a lot of that could be snow perhaps. You certainly would be ruling out the chance of some wintry weather from Glow C. This is late winter, January, February, March, drier than average to the north. We've got all the high pressure, above average precipitation around the UK and much of Central Europe. Again, won't be ruling out a lot of that falling as snow with such an extensive northern blocking signal. Jamstec also is going for a colder than average winter for the UK and for Ireland, below average temperatures from Jamstec. A very, very cold winter being predicted for much of America as well, while Canada comes out with a very mild winter. Now we do see eastern parts of Europe and also central parts of Europe looking rather mild. So that's a little bit of a concern if you want a cold winter. But again, we have to emphasise UK and Ireland being forecast to have cold average temperature anomalies for this winter. And that's been a consistent signal from Jamstech through these 3 winter 2018-19 updates. All 3 of them, the Jamstech model has been forecasting a colder than average winter. Precipitation anomalies look like that, and a drier than average winter hinted at to the north of the country, a wetter than average winter hinted at to the south. And so again, we have got this blocking signal. It's a recurring theme across many of these models to have northern blocking be sitting to our north up here, and low pressure to be down here with the jet stream as well. So Jamstech also hinting at a colder than average winter. And finally, we get to the Beijing Climate Centre. This is our final model for this third and final winter 2018-19 season model roundup. And you'll remember, I do rate the Beijing Climate Centre very highly when we get to the last month before the season. So the last month in November 2017, before the winter 2017-18, the Beijing Climate Centre was one of the few models in that update that was hinting at the chance of a colder winter. And before summer 2018, the Beijing Climate Centre was one of the few models that was going for a very hot summer for the UK and much of Northern Europe. This is the 200 millibar height anomaly then from the Beijing Climate Centre for the winter of 2018-19, with above average heights to the north up here, and also extending over there. There's no particular trough of below average heights underneath it. There is a trough across eastern parts of America, so another model that's going for a cold winter for many northern and eastern parts, southeastern parts of the states. For us, there's no real trough. You would think there would likely be low pressure coming through here, but we can't confirm that on the 200 millibar height anomaly. Temperature anomalies are looking like this. So the model is going for average to slightly milder than average temperature anomalies this winter. Very mild winter being forecast in the northern latitudes, you'll notice. That's due to all of the high pressure and blocking that the model is placing up here. And in terms of the precipitation anomaly for this winter, which is a little bit unusual given the height anomaly, it is actually going for a rather wet winter in the northern latitudes, where we seemingly have all that high pressure. So I'm not sure how that's marrying up really. In the northern Atlantic, it's a bit drier than average, so would hint at some high pressure up there. And then for the UK, and for much of Europe as well, actually it's looking across southern Europe anyway, rather a wet winter with high pressure to be around Scandinavia, or drier than average conditions, probably high pressure be extending through here. Bit of a mixed bag. Let's try and break this down on a month by month basis in terms of the heights. So this is how the Beijing Climate Centre is forecasting December to shape up. So in December, it wants to have a blocking signal to be to the north of the country. It wants to have a trough of below average heights. This is 500 millibar heights, I should just say. It wants to have below average heights over the UK and across many central parts of Europe. You would expect December to be quite a cold month, actually, with that. I think we'll be bringing in the wind from an east or northeasterly direction. January looks like this. So in January, a very, very cold, maybe severe month is possible across eastern parts of America with this trough of low pressure. And then, of course, we've got all of this blocking going on up here, so really forcing severely cold air down into eastern America. Then we've got the jet stream coming out of America into that sort of area, but we do have a very strong blocking signal to our north. So we have a lot of high pressure going on up here around Greenland, extending over to Canada. The Azores high looks like it's being pushed over towards Bermuda to some degree, which is always quite an interesting place. The Azores high appears to be displaced a little bit southwest of its normal position. Its normal position would usually be somewhere like there. That would be the central position of the Azores high. The Beijing Climate Center is actually placing that down there towards Bermuda. So when that happens, when you get the Azores high pushed down towards Bermuda, you'll usually push the jet stream southwards as well, the jet going in through there. And again, all of this high pressure up here, you will think, is likely to be forcing cold air down into the UK. So I think in terms of 500 millimeter high temperature cold January is possible there. And then this blocking signal just gets more extreme as we go into February. Again, this is a recurring theme across many of these models again. So the blocking signal becomes really quite intense across the northern latitudes, kind of like covering Canada, or what's the Atlantic side of Canada, over to Greenland, over to Iceland, over to Scandinavia, and pushing into northern parts of Russia as well. Low pressure still there as the trough across East America. Very cold winter is possible for them. The low pressure is stuck in the central part of the Atlantic, and I would think we're likely to be bringing in cold easterly winds really across the UK and much of Northern Europe. So again, reading between the lines, I think the Beijing Climate Center is there with a cold winter, particularly again later in the winter when it's making this blocking pattern quite extreme as we get through to February. So, what do we make of that? Very, very interesting, I have to say, for our third and final season model roundup for winter of 2018-19. I can't remember this ever happening before. It looks like the models have shifted very, very strongly to a blocking signal for this winter. They have shifted very, very strongly, therefore, to a colder than average winter. Although it's not particularly apparent from the temperature anomalies, because they are all, or most of them, are overcooking those temperature anomalies, because that's what these models do. And that's why you have to concentrate on geopotential heights and mean sea level pressure, and not so much precipitation and temperature. Because of the very strong blocking signals that is evident across many of these models this month, we have seen a really dramatic shift towards a colder than average winter for our third and final seasonal model roundup for the winter of 2018-19. And so when we come to bring the forecast together a week tomorrow on Sunday 2nd of December, we will factor in this shift that has occurred within the long range models, and it will play quite an important part of our winter forecast. The fact that many of these long-range models are now forecasting a really extensive northern blocking signal, and many of them are via their geopotential heights and mean sea level pressure anomalies. Many of them are hinting, anyway, forecasting a colder than average winter. This is the most interesting seasonal model update I've ever done for a winter, because there has never been such a strong signal as this, going all the way back to 2012. We've never had this happen, that the models have shifted in this direction as dramatically as this in the final update. Normally, if you're going to get a signal for a cold winter, it'll be in the early updates, the first one, and then it'll kind of drain away, go away as you go further on. But this one, it has shifted in the final update. So, I think that's probably been quite interesting, hasn't it? And this video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page with a written summary later on today, just going over everything we've discussed in the video. And of course tomorrow we've got your 13th and final winter update, so that's going to be having a look for one last time at the GWV methodology, and that'll be with you from 10 AM tomorrow morning. Coming up later on today, we've got weekend forecast. We'll also have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days, and there'll be a Christmas update this evening as well, so I'm going to be running on fumes, and I've still got to record that winter update before bed as well, so quite how I'm going to fit it all in, I don't know, but there we go, I'm going to have to do my best. So later on, the next video up will be weekend forecast. Come back for that around 2 o'clock. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.